I just had no confidence in myself. I was really convinced I was mentally handicapped when I got to college.
If I told you this woman was a business genius, you'd probably laugh in my face. But she would go on to own an egg carton business of all things that makes several $1 million a year in profit. This is a true rags to riches story. And her brilliant strategy for finding profitable businesses is one that every entrepreneur needs to hear. Sarah Moore was virtually unknown on the internet. She's not some get-rich-quick influencer. She's not some tech billionaire. She's a down-to-earth kid from the middle of nowhere in Ohio. She went from being a troubled orphan, in and out of jail, to the owner and CEO of a multi-million-dollar business with one simple idea that anybody can implement, and I guarantee you've never heard before. I first found out about her from my favorite podcast, My First Million. Her story was incredible. After doing a deep dive study, I took away 3 simple concepts that will completely change the way that you think about starting your own business. But first, let me tell you about her crazy backstory. Sarah grew up one of 3 girls. They didn't really have a stable household. From what I could tell, she bounced around the foster care system. It was a difficult upbringing.
My 2 older sisters, they made the most of it. They got really into academics and sports. I made the worst of it, I would say. And I became somebody that you would not want your kids hanging out with. I was partying all the time. I wouldn't go to school, so I had a truancy officer. I went to jail. I was just so disrespectful to everyone. And I got away with it because people felt sorry for me. And the beginning of high school, I was living with a woman that was an alcoholic, and her favorite thing when she got drunk was to take all my items and throw them out onto the front lawn and just tell me to leave. And I didn't really have anywhere to go. I was a kid.
Imagine being a kid, constantly on the move, never really having a place to call home. She sought a semblance of normalcy amidst the chaos, a deep longing for a stable home. That brings me to lesson 1. Don't count yourself out. In fact, make your weakness a strength. Turn your why not into your why. I see a lot of entrepreneurs come from this type of backstory. They have a chip on their shoulder. Sarah recounts drinking and partying with her friends at a young age. She was in and out of jail at a young age also. Everything was heading in the wrong direction. She would go to the golf course, drink, and pass out, and wake up to the sprinklers hitting her face in the morning. This was until one day her life changed forever.
And so there was a woman named Natalie Bracken who used to pick me up and take me to her house, and she'd let me stay there until this woman inevitably came back to earth and said, "Where did you go?" and called the police. And so I was constantly going back and forth between the Bracken's house and this other household. I was being transported by the police, and no one could really do anything about it. Nobody seemed to really care. And one day she just got so fed up, and she said, "I'm going to adopt you." Obviously, it was pretty transformational. I'm living in her home with her family and her daughter I was actually friends with.
Sarah was given a lifeline. She couldn't keep going down the road that she was on. This was the first time that somebody believed in her. Mr. Bracken sat down and taught her how the world worked. You have to go to school. You can't keep down this path. She was terrified that the Brackens would change their mind. She was going to do everything that she could to not disappoint them. She started working hard at school to get her GPA up. She took a job as a waitress. She was starting to get her life on track. This is when she met the second person who changed her life. While waiting tables at the restaurant, she waited on a couple that was secretly rich. They came in often, and they developed a great relationship. The man offered Sarah a job working at his company. He became her mentor. School was going well, and she was trying to get into college. She was waitlisted trying to get into Northwestern. Her mentor told her to take herself off financial aid because the college wouldn't accept her if she was on it. She said, "But how am I going to pay for school? Northwestern is extremely expensive." He said, "Don't worry, we'll pay for it."
So between these two couples, I mean, they changed my entire life. It wasn't just the money too. It wasn't just the home. It was these people changed the way I viewed myself. They invested in me when I was truly the world's worst investment. I mean, who takes a kid like me, what I was like, and say, "You know what? I'm going to go all in on this." Like, they put their ass out in the line for me on multiple occasions with the worst track record you can possibly imagine. And from these two families, I had this whole concept in my head of, I just want to be that one person for one person. Because for me, I literally begged when I was a kid sometimes for people to help me. I would beg judges, I would beg attorneys, I would beg social workers to put me in better circumstances or help me with X and Y, and nobody helped me at all. They felt sorry for me, but nobody took action.
She went to college to be a social worker. She wanted to help kids that were in a similar situation to hers, but she quickly realized that that wasn't her personality. Then she bounced over to law. She thought that she could be that hard-nosed attorney helping kids in the system, but she had way too much entrepreneurial spirit for that, so she called her mentor.
So one day I called Steve, the owner of this company I worked for. I call him boss. And I said, hey, boss, I don't know what I'm going to do here. I'm now a junior in college and I've worked for you, but that's kind of my only work experience. And I have no experience in anything but criminal justice now and social work. And I don't want to do these professions. And he said, you are not an academic. You are geared for business. It comes naturally to you. And he said, and you can have a way bigger impact in business than criminal justice or social work.
She quickly became overwhelmed in business school. She felt imposter syndrome. She was a kid who came from nothing. She wasn't an Ivy League kid. She didn't grow up rich like all her classmates. She didn't even take her own SATs. Her sister took them for her. This became clear when she was working on a group project with another classmate. He was always incredibly responsive, annoyingly so. And she asked him, why are you so responsive? He mentioned his time working for Goldman Sachs. They had a 15-minute rule. You never had longer than 15 minutes to respond. In the bathroom, 15 minutes. In the shower, 15 minutes. And your wife's giving birth, you guessed it, 15 minutes. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. She didn't want that. She didn't want to be a high-priced slave. She didn't want to have a boss pushing her around. So she knew she had to do something different. Between her first and second year of business school, she was talking to a classmate about what he wanted to do afterward. And he mentioned something called a search fund. He explained that a search fund is where you can go out and buy some grungy business and become the CEO overnight without any money or experience. She was like, sign me up. This then started her journey on finding a business that she could buy. She believed that if she found the right business, she could run it if she tried hard enough. But she thought, how would you even identify a good business? She didn't have a background in private equity. How would you even search for a profitable business? She had no idea what she was doing. Yeah, she was at Harvard, but they teach you very expensive financial models. They don't teach you how to buy a commercial window washing business. So she thought, I probably need to go the investor route if I'm going to buy a business. But she found out quickly that you have to pay back 1.5 times your investment. So that didn't seem like an option. She was stuck. There had to be a way to do this. And that leads me to lesson 2. Whatever it takes with whatever you got. She had sweatshirts made that said, I want to buy your business on it. And she wore them everywhere. She sent faxes to random businesses looking for opportunities. She leveraged her height and gender, wearing bright colors, and put on heels, and went to broker events to stick out. She wanted to signal to herself, her future team, and the universe that she was going to do whatever it took, however she could. Then one day she had a conversation with her friend. He convinced her that she needed to get the reps in. He said it's similar to dating. You have to look at a bunch of businesses and get better at identifying a good deal. She decided to become a master at recognizing a good business. So, what was the plan? Step 1. She was going to utilize some of the smart people around her. She got one of her smart friends to scrape the database with all the private companies within an hour and a half of her apartment in Boston. This was a massive list, but there was a major obstacle in all of this. All the data was self-reported, so most of it was inaccurate at best. How did she get around that? More on that later. Step 2 was to assemble a team. She used Craigslist and any other avenue that she could to find interns. She found over 50 interns. But you might think, wait, isn't she a student? How did she get a bunch of students to help her do this? What did they get out of it? Well, here's the ad that she sent out. It turns out that private equity doesn't do free internships. You're more of a liability and a waste of their time. She gave them the private equity experience and transparency into everything. They could even listen to her phone calls. This was a once-in-a-lifetime front row seat. But where would this huge team work? So that's the thing. They had to hustle and find over 50 lookalike IDs from former students so they could use the university's library. She hustled. Step 3, mass outreach. So back to the problem in step 1. False positives, self-reporting, low response rates from emails. She said she was just going to light everybody up and do mass outreach, huge email blasts. She saw that most email addresses were first.lastname@company or first name, last initial at company, or some combination or variation of that. So they used a bulk email checker to verify the emails. Then they would craft the emails to look custom and specific, but actually they were very broad and generic.
What was interesting is, we had this huge list of people and you'd think, oh, well, if somebody reaches back out to me, how am I going to talk to them? But you realize it's kind of the same conversations over and over. So we would do this approach where it's like bombs away. And after we'd send out an email, we'd be getting tons of phone calls from people. And we had sent the emails out in such a way that it looked like it was done targeted. Like it looked like we specifically did our research and said, hey, I'm looking for a business to buy and yours seems to perfectly fit the bill because it's within this revenue range. It's been around for a really long time and it's been profitable for a number of years. And the people that responded and said, actually, no, you idiot, that's not true. Great. Now we know. That's perfect.
Right. Yeah. And they filled out your survey essentially.
Yeah. They didn't realize it. They thought they were telling us off.
Yeah.
And the best replies were the ones that were, wow, you really did your research here. This is great. They reach out to me. They're telling me how much research I've done. I have no idea who they are. I've got the interns scrambling, figuring out what area code is this? Who is this? What could this possibly be? As I'm pretending to have spent this time researching their business.
That brings me to lesson 3. It's a numbers game. They sifted through over 400,000 private companies for over a year and a half with 50 interns to find that diamond in the rough. So she would field these calls and emails every day, but it only takes one good one. So she eventually got an email back from the owner of eggcartons.com. He said, "You're right. You did do your research." She didn't do her research. We have been profitable for many years now. We have a strong customer base. We do these types of numbers in revenue and this type of profit. It's a very stable and simple business. This company was literally the carton that your eggs come in. It was basic and simple, but it was a profitable business. They literally buy, store, and sell egg cartons. Look how basic the website is. It wasn't a flashy tech startup. It wasn't drop shipping or AI. It was a stable, profitable business that the average person with good work ethic could go in and grow. It was cash flow. How did she close the deal though? First of all, she immediately got down to the offer and then asked if his price was within that range. He knew what his business was worth because he looked into selling it previously. But she had no money to buy the business. How could she structure the deal? A seller's note. What's a seller's note? You structure the deal like this. I pay a large chunk up front and the rest I make on payments. The seller becomes the bank in this case. Why is that important? It's crucial because she was able to turn around and finance the down payment of the seller's note through a bank using the seller's note as equity. Wait, how does that make sense? Isn't the seller's note debt, not equity? Exactly. However, she explains, most banks aren't going to do this, but there are a lot of bankers out there that have no idea what they're doing when it comes to loans. So if you go to enough banks, there are going to be some that can make your seller's note look like equity. So you're buying a business with zero money down, and then using the seller's note as a down payment essentially. The first couple of years of owning the business, she made some mistakes. She recounted one big lesson. Don't change anything too fast. She changed the phone systems to update to IP phones. They previously worked off an old phone system. That was a big mistake for the company. Spectrum lost the phone line mid-porting, and so their phones were down for a week. What made things worse is that all the customers knew that this was a new owner, so they were questioning whether or not she went out of business. It wasn't a good look. About 2 years in, she really started growing the business. She saw that a lot of orders had nothing to do with anything related to egg cartons. It was random things. It was anything that could be separated and protected. She had crickets, machine parts, all types of products. So she decided to diversify and rebrand around that insight. And that is when the business really took off to become the multi-million-dollar Goliath that it is. I highly recommend that you check out the My First Million podcast for more info on her. This is a small channel that I'm just getting going, so please make sure that you subscribe to the channel. Hi, my name's Cody Moore, and I make case studies on millionaire startups. Subscribe to the channel if you want more of these. Please put in the comments a business that you'd like me to make a case study on.